Hi, and welcome to this course about navigating in Google Maps on desktop. Whether you are planning a trip, exploring a new area, or just want to understand how to use maps more effectively, this course will help you get the most out of the app. Here, we will cover everything from how to explore the map and use its controls, how to view different map details, how to use Street View effectively, important tips for searching for places, how to get directions using different types of transportation, along with other useful tips. This course also includes practical examples using towns and locations from different parts of the world. I want to make a bit of variety, and you can also try it out in your region or wherever in the world you prefer. This course is designed for everyone, whether you are already familiar with Google Maps or just getting started and want to learn how to use it better. So, let's start the course. I hope the tips you learn make using Google Maps easier and more enjoyable for you. To open the Google Maps application in a computer, go to your browser search bar and type Google Maps, or more directly, google.com/maps. Okay, once the map opens, you'll usually see the area around your current location by default. Sometimes it might show a specific region or your city, while other times you may see the entire country where you are at the moment. Now let's learn how to navigate the map, and I strongly recommend using a mouse as it's easier and more practical than just a touchpad. If you scroll the mouse wheel down, the map will zoom out. Simple. Then, to zoom in on a specific location, move your pointer to that area and scroll up until you can see more detail. However, if you don't have a mouse available, don't worry because you can use these controls at the right side to change the zoom. Another important function is panning the map. You can do this by clicking and holding the left button, then move the pointer to explore different areas. Okay, now it's time to practice together. Start by zooming out until you have a global view of the world. Now try to find the United Kingdom. Slowly zoom in and look for its capital city, London. Keep zooming in until you can clearly see the river and buildings in the central area of the city. Nice. In the next step, I'm going to teach you a feature that lets you view buildings in 3D. Go to the map icon, then select More, and activate Globe View here at the bottom. You will notice that the map changes slightly. Close the pop-up window, and to orbit the map in 3D, click with the left button and hold the Shift key at the same time. When you move your mouse, you will be able to rotate the view and see the buildings in London's city centre from a 3D perspective. Then use the scroll wheel again to zoom in on a specific area, then click and hold the left button to move around without changing the perspective. So feel free to explore the city of London, which is great to start practicing navigation in Google Maps. You might even spot a famous building like the Big Ben or the Tower Bridge. Now let's learn more about the controls located in the bottom right corner of the screen. I'm going to start with the compass. With it, we can rotate the view by clicking on these side arrows. Then, this red part of the directional arrow shows which direction is north. If I click on it, I'll return to the standard 2D view with north facing up. The icon below switches the perspective between 2D and 3D. Next, this button shows our current location as a blue circle, and make sure to allow the location access in the browser and system settings. And keep in mind, On computers, the location is often less accurate comparing to smartphones, since most desktops don't have GPS. Now I'm going to zoom in to a different area. For example, this hilly region in Wales. It's very nice, you will see. I'm going to click on this arrow in this panel to see pictures related to the area currently shown on the map. Also notice that when I hover the pointer over a picture, we can see the exact location where the image was taken. This is very interesting, but keep in mind that these pictures are uploaded by users, so the locations might not always be correct, but most of the time, yes. To exit the image mode, click on the cross, and I can minimize the image section in the arrow. Finally, this little yellow figure enables the Google Street View. If we pick it up and move it, we can see the view at any point along a blue line. Usually it's along roads, streets, can be on cycleways, pedestrian areas, and sometimes even on parks and squares. Let's try it here, but don't release the mouse button until a preview appears. Right now, because sometimes it doesn't work. So, as you can see, this is a really useful tool for exploring an area. And of course, feel free to try it out. Then we will cover more about the Google Street View later in this course. Now let's zoom into the Netherlands and try to find the area around Amsterdam. Google Maps comes with two main map types: satellite, which is the current view, and map, also called the default view, which you can easily switch to by clicking on this button. In the default map type, it's easier to see the roads, and also more road signs like this one are displayed. Some elements are also easier to recognize, such as lakes, lagoons, rivers, and other water features, which are shown in blue. Forests, meadows, and sometimes farmlands are typically displayed in green, while populated areas usually appear in this cream color. Also, notice that when the natural landscape is dry, like steppe or desert areas, it's usually shown in brown instead. Now, let's switch back to the satellite type. Click on More, and in this mode, we have the option to turn off labels, which isn't possible in the default map view. This is useful if you want to take screenshots of specific areas without any labels appearing on the map. Sometimes they are just annoying. Ah, and one more tip. If you are only using 2D view, it's best to turn off globe view as it uses more memory and may slow things down. Now, let's explore the map details options, which appear when we hover the pointer over this button. The first option here is Terrain, which displays topographic features, including the elevation and contour lines. However, in this area we don't notice much difference because most of the Netherlands is flat. Let's move west and find a more hilly region, this one in Wales. As we zoom in, we can see the hills, the contour lines, and even some elevation markers, such as this one of 200 meters. Even when the image is not perfectly clear, these details help us understanding the landscape better. Now let's return to the Amsterdam area and switch to the traffic layer. This layer shows traffic conditions on roads that Google considers significant enough to include. Now, the level of detail depends on the zoom level. If I zoom out, only the major roads display traffic data. On the other hand, as I zoom in, I can see that more roads appear with traffic information. Then, Google uses color coding to indicate traffic flow. The lines in green color means the traffic is moving smoothly. Then yellow, it indicates moderate traffic with vehicles moving slower. And red indicates that there is a very slow moving traffic or even a complete stop. However, it doesn't always mean that there is a heavy congestion, as it can be caused by a long red traffic light or even roadworks. By default, the traffic shown on Google Maps is live, and Google gets this data from drivers using smartphones with the location services enabled, and then there can also be other sources like traffic sensors and historical data. In case you want to check out the average traffic, you can switch this option to typical traffic and choose the day of the week and time that you want to check. Look that around 8 and 9 there are slower roads, because it's when people usually go to work. Then in the middle of the morning the traffic is more fluent. Let's continue. The next layer is transit. This displays public transport routes, such as subways, tram lines, and buses. You can click on a station to see the available services, along with the data showing the peak times when the station is busiest. I'm going to close this window, but if you simply hover the pointer over the station name, you can still check the subway lines that stop at Postgesweg. Now let's check another station, this time a tram stop, which is indicated by this symbol. Finally, this is the symbol of a bus stop, and for this type of transport, you can see the bus lines that stop here, however they are not shown on the map, unlike the tram, subways or metro. The next layer is this one, biking, which is available in certain regions and countries. Here we can see the Amsterdam cycling network, as the city is well known for being bike-friendly. Now there are several types of cycleways. The first one, in dark green, means separate trail, usually built on pavements. Let's check this one, in the street view, and you can see the dedicated cycle path here, in this side. When the cycleway is in light green, dedicated lanes, it means there is a bike lane in the road itself. Here you can see them in both directions. If the route is in dashed green, these roads are bicycle friendly. And although there is no separate path for cyclists, they are typically quieter, or at least prioritize cyclists. Finally, we have also two extra layers, wildfires and air quality. The layer for the wildfire shows the ongoing fires. Let's zoom out. I can see one here in Sicily, Italy. Then notice that this layer also contains the traffic conditions, which are very useful for checking road accessibility near fire-affected areas. For example, when emergency services like ambulances or fire crews are planning routes, or when residents need to avoid blocked roads. Additionally, we can see sometimes the estimated fire area and when was the last time updated. And keep in mind that the absence of fires does not mean they don't exist, as some regions may not report data to Google yet. Finally, the air quality. It's about the quality levels of the air in countries that share this data with Google. Poor air quality can be caused by pollution, wildfires, or even sandstorms in deserts. To find a specific location in Google Maps, we can use the search bar. Here, we can search for any place listed in Google Maps, such as a country, island, a city or a town, in this case Liverpool, a national park, the Lake District for example, or other locations like landmarks, streets, or even businesses. When we enter a search term, Google Maps provides suggestions based on the category of the place. For example, let's search for Galway, a city in the western part of Ireland. As we type the name, we can see several suggested locations that contain the word Galway. In this case, we can see here the Galway City Council, the guard station, and the airport. Since we are looking for the city itself, I'm going to choose the first option, Galway, Ireland. Once selected, the map centers on Galway, and we can see a red border outlining the city limits. Now, when the place is selected, we can find related information in the panel on the left-hand side. Since Galway is a populated place, we typically see the following: a picture of the city on the top, and if we click on it, we can see it bigger and also more photographs uploaded by users. Then, I'm going to return to the main panel with this arrow, and below we can see the local weather at this precise moment, then a short description of the place, you can expand it here, also some suggested accommodation options, and here at the bottom of the list we can see again the photographs. Now let's learn how to find a specific address, for example the High Street, and notice that it's quite frequent for the correct address to appear in the list after typing just a few letters. It's this one, High Street, Galway. Click on it and you will see the map zooming on that location. Then the street is marked with a red pin, which sometimes it's a bit hard to spot. Then, apart from general street names, we can also search for a specific address by including the house number, and this time I will search for 34 Henry Street, and Google is very flexible with this. You can type the number at the beginning, at the end, or even in between. Then look for the correct suggestion. Here it is, and we just select a specific house on the map. When the street view is available for that place, you can click on the image thumbnail to get a sense of what a place looks like. Personally, I find this very interesting, because when I need to go somewhere for the first time, it's much easier to recognize the place, having already seen it in Street View. We can use the search bar to find all kinds of information. For example, let's try to find the Galway Cathedral. I will type cathedral, and here it is, the first result. Then we can also search for restaurants, hotels, and other places. I'm going to search for this one. It looks like a bar, the Sliding Rock. And just by typing the name, we can find it right away. Ah, I see this is an accommodation also, which is interesting because you can even check the price editing it with these controls. To finish this lecture, I want to mention that sometimes the same name may appear in the list more than once, and in this case there are 3 places named Sliding Rock. The first one is the business, as I just showed you before, and the second one is actually the geological site in Galway, the proper Sliding Rock. In this lecture, we are going to cover the Google Street View in more detail, and as you may remember, to use this tool, we have to drag the orange figure to any of the blue paths that are shown in the map. Now, in 2025, Street View is already spread across much of the world, and if you want to get an idea of which countries are covered, you can use this trick. Zoom out and pick up the icon, and you can see that countries mostly shown in blue have most of the main roads covered. That's the case for most of the European continent and many countries in other regions, like North and South America. Africa, indeed, is still limited, as the Street View has good coverage just in few regions, like Nigeria, Kenya, and the southern countries of the continent. Now let's use Street View on a specific road, and this time we are going to New Zealand, which is located here to the east of Australia. I'm going to zoom into the southern part of the country and we are going to explore one of its southernmost cities, Invercargill. If you are having trouble finding it, you can always use the search bar to locate it quickly. Here it is, Invercargill, New Zealand. Then you can close the information panel or just minimize it using this little arrow. Now I will drag the map to show this residential area on the eastern side of the city and pick up the Street View icon to have a look of one of the streets. Let's place it, for example, here on Lindisfarne Street. So this is the view from the exact point where I placed the orange figure. One of the main characteristics of Street View is that these images are 360 degrees. This means that I can click and drag the pointer to see everything around this area. Now let's proceed. In the bottom left corner, we can see a small section of the map showing nearby streets. And by looking at the orange figure, I can tell which direction I'm facing, as there is a little arrow here. For example, right now, I know that Ritchie Street is somewhere behind this house. Now, let's learn how to move along a road in Street View. It's easy. You only need to place the pointer along the street and click when this arrow appears, just like this. So, basically, to move to the next camera shot, click on a point close to you, and if you want to move a bit faster down the street, move the pointer a bit farther ahead before clicking. Then the X symbol that you can see here shows the exact position you will move to when you click. For example, now I'm going to overtake that car. Look. Then, if you want to look at something at the side of the road, like a building, you will notice that when you place the pointer there, it changes to a rectangle. And this lets you view a detail, for example this house, from an exact front-facing perspective. Let's continue. In the top left panel, we can see also more information. First, we can see where is this place, and in this case, there's the street name and house number. But this is not always very specific. Sometimes it's more generic, especially when we are in a road out of an urban area. Here we can only see the road name. Then below we can see the town, region or country. But this isn't always consistent. Sometimes Google shows only the region or even only the country name, especially in rural or less populated places. For example, right now we are near a town called Granton, and it shows Granton, Tasmania. Now I'm going to click in the arrow to return to the map. Here is Granton, and if I zoom out, you can see it's located in the island of Tasmania, an Australian region. But earlier in New Zealand, it only said Southland, which is actually just the name of the region where Invercargill is. The date of the picture is shown at the bottom part of the panel, and by default, it's the most recent time that Street View was captured for that location. But we can still see the previous captures. In See More Dates, there is a timeline showing earlier dates. For example, there are images from 2008. You can click to check it out and see how it looked like more than 10 years ago. It's interesting how sometimes you will notice differences. For example, this house wasn't renovated yet when the photo was taken. Now, about how Street View appears on the map, there are two ways. It can show as a continuous path, usually captured by the Street View car, which has a camera on the top, and images are taken every few meters along the road. Then, in some cases, street view imagery is collected using a backpack camera or even a bicycle. For example, hilly areas where vehicles can't go. You can also find images captured from a train, a boat, or even a snowmobile in remote places like the Arctic. Another way that Street View is displayed on the map is with independent points like the ones you can see in this park. Let's check it out here, and you can see that this image is also 360 degrees, like the others, but some of them may be only static, and it's not possible to move around in. We will often find these single points in parks, stadiums, or tourist attractions, basically places where it's not possible for a car to drive through. These points are typically uploaded by single Google users. Let's zoom into India and find a small city in the center of the country. For example, this one, Siani. Now, if you look at the top of the map, you will see these buttons that let you explore different kinds of places. As you can see, there are restaurants, hotels, things to do, and others. Suppose we are planning to visit a city and want to find a restaurant for dinner. I can either click on the restaurants button or also type restaurants in the search bar. So several results appear on the map. And you can also notice that restaurants are indicated by the knife and fork symbol. However, you might also see some cafes in the list, usually because they also serve food. Now, in the side panel, we can see a list of results for the topic restaurants in this area. And for each place, we can see the rating and the number of reviews. Among the remaining information, sometimes we can also see the price range. For example, this one shows that prices are usually between 200 and 400 rupees. We can also see the type of food, the address or extra information about the location, or if the place is currently open or closed. Let's click on one of the restaurants to check more information. This one is actually a cafe, and you can see it's possible to either dine in or use a takeaway. Now, below, we can see the address, and under the opening times, we can expand this arrow to see the entire weekly schedule, which I find a very useful feature. Now, let's go above and click on the image to see more pictures of this cafe. This is interesting because apart from getting an idea of what it looks like, we can check some of the food they serve, drinks, or in this case, the vibe of the place. These tabs above the images organize the pictures by type depending on what a business has shared. For example, this other restaurant provides the menus, which you can easily find if you see a menu tab above the images. Then, a useful function when searching for a specific type of place is using filters. Let's click on the first one, Ratings. Here, we can choose to show only the restaurants with a rating above, for example, 4. And then, under Cuisine, we can choose the type of food we are looking. For example, I'm going to select South Indian, and you will see that the list becomes much narrower. Next, Hours is an important filter. It allows us to set the time and day of the week when we plan to have dinner. Now look at this helpful tip. If I check this box, Update results when map moves, you will notice that the list updates every time I move around the map. Now let's try another category of place, this time hotels. And you can see that the settings at the sidebar are adjusted specifically for this type of place. Now it's different than restaurants. If we click here, we can set the dates of check-in and check-out that we are planning to reserve. Then the number of guests, and also notice that when we change any setting, the list of results updates automatically. Below, we can edit the price range per night. And now I'm going to click in one of the hotels. For example, this one, Shivani Imperial. So we can see more options. Now, at the top, we can explore some pictures of the property. And if we click on prices, we can sometimes see different sources to make a reservation. For this one, there is only one, which in this case is the official website. Then we can also see some reviews about the property and additional information about the facilities provided. In this lecture, we are going to focus on directions, which is one of the most important features in Google Maps. Basically, how to get from one place to another. This feature has been updated over time to cover several travel options. And now for our example, let's go to the USA, and more specifically to the Washington state, which is in the northwestern part of the country. And don't confuse with the capital, Washington DC, which is actually on the opposite coast. Now, I want to search the directions to drive between two small towns here in this region. First, I need to activate directions in this icon. Then, I can either click on two places on the map or type the names in these fields. That's what I'm going to do. For the starting point, I'm going to type Harrington. And now look at this. As this is a town in Washington state, it's not the first option that appears, because DE refers to another state, which is actually Delaware. So, I need WA, which is the state code of Washington. I'll select this option, and here it is. Then, for the destination, I'm going to choose Cheney, also in Washington. So it's this one. And look that I haven't spelled the name correctly, but it still appeared in the list. Select the first option, and the route is calculated. Now, on the top of the panel, you can see these buttons where you can choose between different types of transportation between these two places. The one selected with the car symbol is driving, and it's what we will focus in this lecture. Then we have options for using public transportation, walking, cycling, or flying, but it's not available in this case. Below the icons, you will see the estimated time it will take for each way. And in the first option, called Best, Google suggests the most efficient way based on the search. Okay, now we can see the recommended route by Google, which is the one highlighted in blue color. It says it's the fastest route and it takes around 47 minutes. However, we can also select one of the alternatives proposed, either by selecting the way in this list or by clicking right on the map. Then over here, there is a setting which by default has the option Leave Now, but we can change that to set a specific departure or arrival time. For example, let's choose next Thursday at 4 p.m. Now you can actually see the results didn't change much, and the estimated travel time still says typically 50 minutes. Typically means that around that time, travel might vary slightly depending on traffic or other things that we cannot predict. But anyway, in this case, the route goes through a low populated area, and the roads have generally fluent traffic, so that's why the estimated time is similar. However, setting specific times can be especially useful in larger cities because they can vary a lot, for example during rush hours. We can also choose Arrive At in case we know the time we have to be in our destination, as it shows the time we should leave. Now let's go to the options. In the left column, we have some route preferences. For example, we can choose to avoid highways, tolls, or ferries. The tolls option is commonly used by people who want to travel more economically. As this highway is free of charge, selecting this option won't have any impact. But you might want to avoid highways anyway. For example, if I'm riding a motorbike or if I just want to drive through smaller and calm roads. Then in the panel at the right, distance units, it's set to automatic because the map will show the units commonly used in that specific country. In our case, it's using miles because it's the standard unit in the United States. So, if you prefer kilometers, just click there and you can see now it shows as 72.8. Now, I'm going to search for driving directions in a big city, for example, London. I'm going to click on directions again, and for the starting point, let's choose the Trafalgar Square, which is right in the heart of the city. For the destination, I'm going to move a bit north and click in this place, the Clissold Park. So, as you can see, the directions are calculated and you can see in the panel the fastest route, which will take around 33 minutes if you depart at this moment. Notice also that the travel time is in red color, which means the route takes longer than usual. And also, if you look at the map, you can see several red parts, which probably suggests heavy traffic in those areas. At this moment, it's 8 AM in London, which is rush hour, and that's why travel times are a bit longer. Then let's change the departure time to a few minutes later. And now it's showing a bigger time frame because it depends on the traffic at that moment. If I set a time in the night, let's say at 5 AM, now you can see it's green color. The times are slightly faster because usually the traffic is more fluent. Now let's learn how to add an intermediate stop to the current route. Let's suppose we want to pass through the Columbia Plateau State Park because we want to see the landscape around there, or it could be another reason. So, in the panel, we can find an option to add a destination. Let's click on that. We can either type the name of the place here or select it directly on the map. That's what I'm going to do. So, as you can see, the state park has been added as another destination, but it's placed after Cheney, and we don't want that. We just want to stop there or pass through it along the route, but that's easy to fix. Using this control, we can rearrange the order of the stops. Now look, our route goes through Columbia Plateau State Park, perfectly as I wanted. And you can see the time was also updated, taking now around 1 hour and 6 minutes. Okay, when using Google Maps on a computer to search for directions, it's useful to get a visual idea of the route. And if there are any crossroads or turns you are worried about missing, I personally like to use Street View, when available, to see how the area looks like. Sometimes there are road signs, like this one, that can help me remember the spot more easily. Then, as an alternative, we can check the details of the route. Here we can see all the turns and steps we will need to follow during the drive. I'm going to expand this section and click on this turn. You can see the map shows the exact location, and in this thumbnail we can explore the street view there. And this is also a great way to view intersections, as we can change the perspective by clicking on the map below. One of the most useful tools when searching for directions is the option to send them to your phone, and it will display the mobile phone linked to your Google account. However, keep in mind that this sends the directions immediately, which is only useful if you are ready to start traveling. In case you want to use these directions later, you can copy the link instead. You can send it to your email or save it in a Notes app, something that you can open it on your phone when you will need it. Finally, there is another way to modify the route. You can click and drag any point on the path to a place you want to pass through. That point will be added to the route, unmarked on the map. Then, if you decide that you don't want that point anymore, simply click on it, and the route will return to the previous path. So, you can adjust the route several times until you are happy with the result. I find this interesting for checking distances between, for example, two towns passing through specific places. Now, there is a disadvantage with this method. If I send the directions to my phone or copy the link, the custom changes won't be saved, because Google Maps will recalculate the route again from scratch without any modifications. Now let's look at how to use public transit directions in Google Maps. I'm going to zoom in on the Seattle region, but instead of the city itself, which has too many routes and options, let's start simple, using two suburbs in the urban area, for example, these ones, Kent and Auburn. These cities are close, and they are connected by both bus and train. I'm going to turn on directions and choose transit. This time, for the starting point and destination, I'm going to click on both cities directly on the map. Here is Kent and Auburn. And you can see that Google suggests only one option, the next bus departing, and it will take 23 minutes. This happens because by default, the departure time is set as leave now. And although Google sometimes shows up to 3 or 4 suggestions, this time there is only one, because the next departures are all the same bus, every 15 minutes. And you can notice that if you switch this option to choose a specific time of departure, for example, 11 a.m. And that's useful because you can see the next travel options from that time. Then, to check the next results, you can click on this arrow to see later times. Let's click on the date and choose a Sunday, because it's usually the day with fewer options. And look, the buses are still frequent. Even this time they are running every 30 minutes instead. Basically, exploring departure times on different days is useful to understand how well two cities are connected, even on weekends. Now, let's check out the details of one of the journeys, this one. And since we choose from Kent to Auburn, without mentioning any addresses, the app usually selects a central point within each city, and will probably suggest a route between main stations. So, let's zoom in on the map where the Kent point appears, and you will see Google suggests starting from Kent Station Bay, right next to the railway station. Then, the bus follows the yellow path to the destination stop, which is the Auburn station. Next, when we look at the bus journey in the panel, it usually shows the number of stops and sometimes more info like the platform number, useful in larger stations, or in this case, there's a symbol meaning that this bus is wheelchair accessible. Then, I click on this arrow to expand and view all the stops in between. At the bottom, and I think this is very useful, we can often find the links for the bus company website, and for this case, the company also provides a direct link to view that specific route's schedule. And another one to check out the ticket prices. Between these two cities, it's also possible to travel by train, even though most of the journeys are in the early morning and late afternoon. For example, if I change the departure time here to 4 p.m., you will now see train options appear. The name of the service is the South Line, and the travel times are much faster, taking only 7 minutes. To understand this is a train, you have to look at the transport symbol here, which is slightly different from the bus symbol, this one. Then there are actually several different icons for each type of transport, like trams, usually represented with an overhead cable. Then there are also symbols for subways, cable cars, and even the monorail, which is a type of transportation that you can find in Seattle. Going back, let's now see the details of this train journey. First, we have the train number, which is 1513, heading to Tacoma Dome Station. Also, if the company shares any important notices or updates, they usually appear here as well. Finally, about tickets and information, you can access the train company's website. This time it's Sound Transit. But now, finding the schedule isn't as straightforward as before, as we need first to select the transport, which is Sounder Train, and then the South Line here. Click on Find Schedule, and here you can see the full timetable of that line and when the train stops in Kent and in Auburn. Finally, I want to share an important tip. I recommend always checking the timetables on the official websites, especially if during your search you see a message like, "We don't have the most recent timetables in this area." Also, at the time of recording this video, many transportation companies were not yet sharing their routes with Google, which means some services might not appear here at all. This time I'm going to search for transit directions between two specific locations. First, I'm going to Kent and choose an address as the starting point. For example, here. Then, for the destination, let's go to Auburn and choose the high school, which is here. Now, let's suppose someone living at that address in Kent needs to arrive at the school in Auburn by 9 a.m. I need to set here arrive by and choose the time that I want. So, you can see several options here. The suggested option sets the arrival time at 8:50, that's 10 minutes before 9, which is good. And for that we have to leave at 8:07. Then below you can see 8:20, which is the scheduled time the bus passes in that stop. Finally, we can see the total walking time, which should be around 24 minutes. Now let's click here to see the details of the route. So first, we have to walk around 30 minutes, and it's very interesting to see how it's so detailed in the map. Then when we reach the bus stop, we will have a 19-minute bus ride until the stop Auburn Ave and 2nd Street and E, and finally an 11-minute walk to the school. Now look at this important note. The 13-minute walk to the bus stop is just an average. Some people walk faster while others slower. But the problem is when you need to pick up a transport after, in this case a bus, as Google doesn't consider any delays in walking and buffer time at the bus stop. So, when Google suggests leave at 8:07, that's not really a safe recommendation. You should add buffer time by yourself, for example 5 or 10 minutes, or even more if it's something important, or if you are just unfamiliar with the area where you need extra time to find the stop or figure out the streets. Now let's go to the city of Seattle, and let's use this time as the departure place, the Smith Tower. And our destination can be, for example, here, this intersection. So, there are several options, as what usually happens in big cities, and some of them require bus changes. Now, I'm going to teach you some important tips. Let's look at this option. It shows the bus number 2/13. This is actually only one bus ride, but it means that both lines share the same route between these two stops. When you click on the details, you can see it suggests the line 2, but in case you miss it, it's possible that the bus 13 will pass there in the next few minutes, and you can take it as well. Now look at another of the options. This one does require a bus change. Let's have a look at the details. First, walk about 4 minutes to that stop. And if you zoom in closer, you can see exactly which side of the street the stop is located. Then, we need to take bus 4, get off at 3rd Avenue and Pike Street, and exactly from the same stop, get on bus 2 until 1st Avenue North and Mercer Street. In this lecture, we are going to look at walking and cycling directions and also some important considerations to keep in mind. So, I'm going to use the same points in Seattle from the previous example. And this time, I'm going to click in this little guy to see the suggested route if I want to walk all the way. There are two options, both saying it takes around 50 minutes. Then if you look below, there's this feature showing the topography of the way. And this is useful because I can get an idea if I need to climb or not. Also, if I put the pointer along the graph, I can see where the steepest or flattest parts are on the map. And if you prefer to see this more clearly, it's actually easier with the map layer, because it gives you more contrast and clarity. Basically, the walking directions can be useful in big towns, especially if you are using your phone as the navigation, since you might need to turn in several places. But be careful with the times given, as Google does not consider delays in road crossing and especially in red traffic lights. I've never been to Seattle, but since this route goes through the downtown, it might actually take a bit longer than what's shown here. Anyway, you can always check out a route with similar distance in a residential area. For example, here it shows a similar time, okay, only 2 minutes less, but in reality, as there aren't almost any traffic lights and also a few cars in the streets, it should be considerably faster here. Now let's check out the cycling directions. This time I'm going to Inverness in Scotland. And let's see a riding route to Nairn, which is a town located 20 miles away, and it also has a nice beach. So, if you look at the route, Google is suggesting avoiding this main road, and it usually prefers cycle roads when they exist. In this case, this route is actually following a UK national cycleway most of the time. Now, it's important to note that the cycling time does not consider any fatigue. In this case, the time expected is 1 hour and 50 for around 20 miles. If I increase the route to cover 60 miles, 3 times the distance, and you can see it says 5 hours for almost 60 miles. Basically, it just adds the time without considering any stops for resting or that people might slow down after several hours of riding. So it's important to keep this in mind. Congratulations for completing this course. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from it. And if you were already familiar with Google Maps, maybe you hadn't noticed before some of the tips I was mentioning during the lectures. So, whether you are planning your holidays, staying in a new city for a couple of nights, or just trying to find the best way to get somewhere, Google Maps can be a very useful tool, and it keeps improving over time. I also believe it's becoming even more useful in many areas. Finding directions is getting easier, especially with public transport, as more transit companies provide real time timetables and direct links to buy tickets. Also, some restaurants now offer table reservations, and you can also check prices and availability at hotels with direct links to external booking sites. These are just few examples as the platform continues improving in several areas. So, that's all for now. Thank you, and maybe we will meet again in the next time.